All right. Deuteronomy chapter 7. When the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and hath cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. We'll just pause right there. Moses is talking about something that hasn't happened yet. But notice he's not using conditional language in this. And this is not, well, we hope he does this, or if he does this. It's a when and shall. Right? God has promised that he was going to do this. And for his name's sake and for his oath's sake, it's going to happen. And so here you can see, the faith of Moses and confidence that God is going to do what he said he would do. When the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land, whither thou goest to possess it, and hath cast out many nations before you. So we got 7 nations listed there. Looked up the meanings of some of these names, see if there's anything interesting. Girgashite, apparently that roughly translates to dwelling on clayey soil. There you go. Hittites, these are a descendant from Heth. Who's Heth? That would be Noah's great-grandson. That would be the son of Canaan. Right? Remember, Ham went in and saw Noah naked, went out and told his brothers about it, basically mocking his father. And so Noah cursed him, but really specifically cursed his son, Canaan. And so Heth was Canaan's second son, so Noah's great-grandson. So those are the Hittites. Amorites, it either means a sayer, like someone that's publicly, or a mountaineer. And so it may be that their dwellings are visible far off. 2 kings that we've already been introduced to, Og and Sihon, they were Amorites. Right? They were Amorites who had gone to the other side of the River Jordan and conquered some land over there. And so since Amorites were possessing it, that was included with what the Israelites were allowed to take, unlike the land of Ammon and Moab, Lot's descendants, and unlike the land of Edom, which was Jacob's twin brother Esau, his descendants. All right. Canaanite, that's just a general word for all the descendants of Canaan, right? Canaan had other sons other than Heth, so it's a general kind of catch-all for those that are in that land. Perizzite, this has to do more with what types of towns they lived in. So Perizzite belonged to a village or like the open country, someplace that doesn't have walls. Hivite is similar. It means like a village or a small town. So not a city, not a walled city. So you've got kind of the open environments, the little towns, backcountry stuff as opposed to cities. So those 2 nations, which their names are associated with. And then Jebusites. They're descendants of a guy named Jebus, and apparently he is another son of Canaan. The Jebusites show up more than just in Joshua. They will still be around even as late as in David's day, because the city that we know as Jerusalem was first called Jebus, right? And so that word Jebus means threshing place, and so Jebus will later be conquered by David. Right? The Jebusites still had it, but had it 500 years later from this, and David would be the first one to conquer them and capture this castle up in the mountains, a very well fortified, protected area. The Jebusites. Any questions on those? Okay. This list of people was told to Abraham more than 400 years ago, that these would be the people that would be subordinate to your seed and your offspring. And that's in Genesis 15, 18 through 21. So this is after God has made this oath by the covenant, where he's moving amongst the cut up animal pieces, and Abram falls into deep sleep, or darkness falls upon him, and he says, "Surely thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that's not theirs, and shall afflict them and serve them. They shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. Also the nations whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance." We're talking about Egypt. "Thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, thou shalt be buried in a good old age." Verse 6, "But in the fourth generation they shall come hither again." So he's in Canaan at that time. He says they're going to come back. "For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full." So the judgment that God is bringing on this people, he's going to allow them to continue to go for a little bit longer before he brings in judgment. "Came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp passed between those pieces," right, those animal pieces that had been cut up, and that was a sign for the solemn covenant taking place. "In the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, he saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt," so that's your southernmost point, "unto the great river, the river Euphrates." That's really farther north. And then the peoples that are described in there, the Kenites, the Kenzites, and the Cadmonites. We don't hear much more about the second two. The Kenites, that will be Moses' father-in-law. He was a Kenite. They were very hospitable to Israel when they came out of Egypt. And later in Saul's day, he would invite the Kenites to flee from amongst the people that he was about to whoop. And so those, I don't know, we don't have much more on the Kenzanites or Cadmonites. But then the last groups, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaims, which means the giants, the Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites. And so those are the peoples that God said, 400-something years later, your seed or offspring would be conquering and overthrowing. And specifically, the iniquity of the Amorites is called out. So Moses here is recounting that when God fulfills that promise, right? God had made an oath to Abram and his seed. The time is now ripe when he's done that. But then he also describes those nations. 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. I don't think that meant 7 nations collectively were stronger than you. I mean, the Israelites had a fighting force of 600,000 men. It's not like they had chariots. It's not like they were defenders with strong cities. They were, an invading force with no, supply lines and all the conventional stuff that you would want when you're going to fight a prolonged war. So they had their themselves. So by human standards, these 7 nations that they're going to fight, they're bigger, they're better defended, they're stronger, and there's more of them. All right, so you got the greater, that's the number, and might means that by human standards, they're stronger. And so if you just had man v. man battle, Israel would lose. Okay? But who's doing the battling? The Lord, right? Because the Lord's going to bring you in, and the Lord's going to cast out these. So verse 2, it says, "When the Lord thy God shall deliver them before them." So this is just a fact. He's saying, this is what God is going to do. Here's how you respond. What is your response? He's going to deliver them to you. Thou shalt smite them. All right? What is the temptation when you've got a captive army? Is okay. Well, it's good enough. Right? We can stop now. And this is a different standard. Right? This is God sending judgment upon these people. And so his command, it's like he's bringing the sword among them, is that you'll smite them and utterly destroy them. This is man, woman, child. Nobody survives. That's the instruction. Thou shalt make no covenant with them. There's no treaty that they can make to end this. There's no treaty that you can accept, nor show mercy unto them. All right? When you talk about God showing mercy unto whom he'll show mercy, and wrath unto whom shall wrath, he's doing that. He's demonstrating that. He has chosen to pour out his full and unmitigated wrath upon these people, and there will be no mercy shown. Not only that, you will not make marriages with them. All right? Now, if they'd obey in 2, why would he have to mention 3? All right, so knowing that they will disobey, God has given them an additional instruction of when you don't obey the first thing, don't give them in marriage. Don't take their daughters. Don't give your sons, right? That's why. Is it because there's some racial element about this? These are genetic, different? No. It's because, verse 4, for they will turn away thy sons from following me, that they may serve other gods. So will the anger of the Lord be kindled against you and destroy thee suddenly. All right? There's a grave warning of this, of that you don't intermingle with these who are not going to follow me, because your next generations will be led astray. They'll go worship other gods, and then it won't be good for you overall, and I'll have to come destroy you. That concept of being equally yoked, here it is, right? You want to be on the same page about who it is you as husband and wife are serving. And if you're not, you can be led astray and made things much harder. All right? But thus shall ye deal with them. All right? The them is referring to their gods. Ye shall destroy their altars, break down their images, cut down their groves, and burn their graven images with fire. All right. This is not you come in and you allow the local culture to continue to exist. You just, that's their idol. That's fine over there. And you can see the pieces of the pagan culture here. You've got an altar. That's where you sacrifice something. You've got the image itself, whether it's carved or made of wood or melted and engraved, right, with gold or silver, whatever that is, whatever that thing is, whatever it looks like. And then you also have some kind of ceremonial trees that are planted around it, right? So these groves, right? And so when you have these elements together, you know this is where people go to worship their pagan gods. He says, you destroy all of it. Don't leave the altar. Certainly don't reuse it. Don't allow the image to stand. You knock it down. And then not only knock it down, you burn it. And you chop down those trees around the grove. So the whole thing is getting wiped out. Now let's go ahead and jump down to the end of the chapter. It gives us a little bit of information in 25 and 26. After you've burned those images, the graven image of their gods, you shall burn with fire. You don't even want the scraps of it. All right? Thou shalt not desire the silver or the gold that is on them, nor take it unto thee, lest thou be snared therein, for it is an abomination to the Lord thy God. The materials that were used to make these false gods are disgusting, reprehensible, gross, vile unto the Lord. He is a jealous God, and this thing that they've made has tried to occupy a space that's rightfully his. You don't even use it for recycling. All right? Don't try and repurpose that gold and say, well, it's gone through the fire, it's purified. No, don't take any of it. Why? Verse 26, neither shalt thou bring an abomination into thy house, lest thou be a cursed thing like it. But thou shalt utterly detest it, thou shalt utterly abhor it, for it is a cursed thing. All right. Have you ever wondered why Achan had to die when he stole a wedge of silver from Jericho? Because God had said beforehand, don't take any spoil out of that city. It's not for you. And in fact, I think the silver and gold that was there was going to be given into the treasury of the Lord's house, of the tabernacle. And so he's not only disobeying God, he's stealing from God. He said this was a cursed thing because you've taken it, and so it made him cursed. And so that because he was cursed among the nation, the whole nation was under the curse. That's why they lost the battle at Ai. When you had a small, insignificant little city just put the whooping on them. And again, it made no logical human sense, but the Lord wasn't with them, and so they were going to lose because at that time there was this curse upon them because they had disobeyed. So that's how you are to interact with the gods of these people that you're coming in to dispossess. All right, you're not to take it, not to do anything with it, burn it. They're cursed. Now, go back to Leviticus 18 and 24. Leviticus 18 is, a common chapter that people look at to see all manner of vileness, of sexual sin, of perversion, and distortion. Well, if you get to 24, it says, "Defile not yourselves in any of those things," so all that had come before in that previous chapter. "For in all these the nations are defiled, which I cast out before you." These are all practices that were going on in that land before they got there. Don't take those practices. Verse 25, "The land is defiled. Therefore do I visit the iniquity thereof upon it, and the land itself vomiteth out her inhabitants." So because of the wickedness that the inhabitants were doing there, God is basically saying that it's so nasty that he is, ejecting them from the land, and the way he's going to eject them is by their death. And then there's a warning, "Ye shall therefore keep my statutes and judgments, and shall not commit any of these abominations, neither any of your own nation, nor any stranger that sojourneth among you." All right, whether it's you or people just staying with you, they don't do it. "For all these abominations have the men of the land done, which were before you, and the land is defiled." So you don't do them, "that the land spew not you out also when ye defile it, as it spewed out the nations that were before you. For whosoever shall commit any of these abominations, even the souls that commit them, shall be cut off from among their people." All right, so you've got a real clear illustration there of what had been going on in Canaan beforehand. Why is their judgment being brought down? And this is the manner in which they are to execute it upon all the people, and very specifically even upon their idols or images. All right. Yes, ma'am.
When you go back to when they were on the mount and when Moses went up and came down, they were playing and had made the golden calf.
Yep.
All right. Had they learned that when they were in Egypt? Because that was God's people, and that was what they made.
Had they learned about the idols in Egypt? I mean, they'd seen a multitude of idols, and I believe they were told to put away the idols among them before then. But they had also heard God say in the audible voice, "Don't have any other idols." And there they are 40 days later, they've already disobeyed. So, yeah.
So they were all, I guess, that came from their surroundings in Egypt and what they had learned there.
I don't know how they came up with the cow. Maybe that's what Aaron could carve. But their request was, "Make us gods to go before us." It's we're ready to go. We understand that this is a God-driven caravan, so let's get some gods and go. But yeah, they'd certainly seen a bunch of idolatry within Egypt. All right. So that's how you're to interact with their images. Cut them down. Take down all the paraphernalia. Burn it. Don't reuse it, lest it be a curse. Why? Verse 6. "For thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God." All right, holy. We use the word sanctified, set apart for a holy purpose. All right. How did they get that way? "The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above," or out of, "all the people that are upon the face of the earth." All right. Does the Bible teach the doctrine of election? Yeah, you better believe it. This is probably the most explicit first example, but God has been demonstrating election back to Cain and Abel. We'll see in the New Testament why one was rejected and the other wasn't. It was because one was righteous, right? There was a difference that God had made between those two men. But probably the most explicit would be the twin boys, Jacob and Esau, when they were still in utero, still in the womb, still in their mama's belly. and they were fighting, right? And their mama went to see what's going on, and the response she got was, as there's two nations battling within thee, and the younger shall serve the older. Right? So that was God's answer, is that the younger was going to be greater than the older. Well, the younger turned out to be Jacob. Right? And in the New Testament, we learn that that was done by God, that the purpose of election might stand before either baby had done any good or evil. Right? Jacob was not a particularly nice fellow. He was a shyster, a crook. he was sneaky. And so if you had to take human standard and say, which would you choose as the good son, it probably would have been Esau, right? We don't see anything, really out of sorts other than the fact that he's ready to kill his brother for vengeance. But God chose Jacob. And so here, by God's choice, right, this is not the people chose God. God chose them. He made them holy. He set them apart for a holy purpose. He's chosen thee to be a special people unto himself. Let's see. There is a parallel passage. I want to look at it just real quick in Deuteronomy 14 and 2. Very similar language, but it's got a particular word that I want you to catch. Deuteronomy 14:2, thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God, and the Lord hath chosen thee to be a particular people unto himself above all the nations that are upon the earth. All right. Hopefully that sounds familiar to you from 1 Peter. 1 Peter chapter 2 and in verse 9 describes the children of God, both Jew and Gentile. 1 Peter 2:9, but ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a particular people, that ye should show forth the praises of him who hath called you out of darkness and into his marvelous light, which in time past were not a people, that would be the Gentiles, but are now the people of God, which had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. So this pattern of God choosing people has been consistent through Scripture from the beginning through the end. If you just want to do a word search for the word elect, it shows up 16 times in the New Testament. 15 of those are referring to God's people. There's one that refers to elect angels, chosen people. And we know that definition is not just Jews, but Jews and Gentiles. Right? So these were chosen to be a particular people. He was going to bless them in great and wonderful ways, but those blessings were going to be conditional upon their obedience. And through that, you'd be given the law, and it would be demonstrated over and over and over again that even in the best of circumstances, if you have all the promises of health and wealth and prosperity, you still won't obey God. And they wouldn't, and they couldn't. There's no one that would keep the law. So, you're a holy people. Why? Because the Lord chose you. Again, talking to Israel. You're a special people unto himself. Now, talking about the sovereignty of God, like we talked about earlier, Connor and Patrick, right? Sovereignty. The Lord did not set his love upon you, nor choose you, because ye were more in number than any people, for ye were the fewest of all people. Right? God didn't choose Israel because they were somehow more worthy, that they were greater, that they were more impressive. In fact, they were little, they were insignificant. And in fact, time that he chose Israel, there was exactly one. It was Abraham. I guess two, Abraham and his wife, but that's right. They were not a great nation. It was an old man and an old woman beyond childbearing years. Right. Same thing in the broader picture with the family of God. He didn't choose us because we were good. Right? Romans 3 blows that out of the water. There's none good, none righteous, no, not one. Not because we were smarter, not because we were seeking him or understood him. No, none. But this is of his own sovereign will. He both set his love upon them and chose them the same way that he set his love upon you and chose you. It was his sovereign choice as his right. That was how he would describe it in Romans 9, which is what I was alluding to a little earlier. So let's just go look at that. Romans 9 and 11, talking about the twins, Jacob and Esau. For the children being not yet born, right, still in the womb, neither having done any good or evil. Why? That the purpose of God, according to election, his choice, might stand. Not of works, right? Not because of something they'd done, but of him that calleth, his own choice. It was said unto her, the elder shall serve the younger. That's quoting Genesis 25:23. As it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. That's quoting Malachi 1, 2, and 3. What shall we say then? God made a choice. He chose one and not the other. Shall we say, is there unrighteousness with God? The answer is, God forbid. That's the strongest no you can get. For he saith to Moses, so Paul is going to quote Exodus 33:19, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy. That's God talking. I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. So then it is not of him that willeth, not of our desires as people, not of Israel's desire, nor of him that runneth, not by what you do, but is of God that showeth mercy. So you've got the sovereignty of God, you've got the election by God, making a choice of a people unto himself, and this is in type. All right, this is the small picture. Choosing Israel as a nation was the small picture. The real picture is revealed later in the New Testament, showing God's righteousness of what he did before the world even began, of choosing a whole people out of every kindred nation to himself, that they would be a holy people, and to be holy, knowing that sin would enter the world. That is why Jesus would have to come and redeem them, and they would be purchased into his family. Right? So, don't get wrapped up when people say, well, God of the old times did this, or he was a God of judgment, or he was a God of this. But the New Testament God, he does not change. You may not have understood what he was doing or hadn't read really closely, but this is the same God. All right? All right, so he didn't choose you because you were more. In fact, you were the least. But because the Lord loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he had sworn unto your fathers, hath the Lord brought you out with a mighty hand. All right, so it wasn't about anything about you, but it was the fact that he loved you, and he made a promise, specifically an oath, to your fathers, to Abraham, which was repeated to Isaac, which was repeated to Jacob, that he was going to bring you out of bondage. And so that's what he did. He is keeping his oath. And because he chose to love you. He brought you out with a mighty hand. All right, did he bring them out of Egypt with a mighty hand? Yeah. And redeemed you out of the house of bondmen from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. All right, and then in Egypt, it's probably hard for us to wrap our head around, but Egypt was like a superpower back then. All right, these little 7 nations in Canaan, they're like small potatoes in the grand scheme of warfare. God's already whooped up on the equivalent of like a China, and now you're going to be told to invade. I don't know. Think of some small nation in like Peru. I don't know. But the idea is that God's already done this on a grand scale against one of the strongest and biggest armies and just thoroughly whooped them. And now you're being told to go in obedience to them because your fathers didn't, right? 40 years ago or 38 years ago, they were supposed to, having just seen that, and they wouldn't. So he's going to do it. Again, not because of you or because you're so good, but because he chose to love you. Right? It's all really about him. He loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he swore unto your fathers. Okay, we won't go on that rabbit trail. Kind of take it close. Verse 9. Know therefore that the Lord thy God, he is God. Right? Who is God? Right? There's one true and living God. This God, Jehovah, he's him. Right? The Lord, Jehovah, thy God, he is God. The faithful God. Sometimes we talk about the names of God. That's a way you could describe God. The faithful God. We talked about the jealous God, the God whose name is jealous. Here's the faithful God. In his faithfulness to the love that he's put upon a people, and the faithfulness to his own word, and therefore his name's sake, he is going to follow through with what he said. Which keepeth covenant and mercy with who? with them that love him and keep his commandments. To 1,000 generations. And 1,000 generations is another way of saying, unending, right? It's, just time out of mind. So that's one side, the mercy of God to them that love him and keep his commandments, and repayeth them that hate him to their face, to destroy them. He will not be slack to them that hate him. He will repay him to his face. You still have here both sides. A God of wrath with those that hate him, and a God of mercy to those that love him and keep his commandments. All right. Who's the only one who has perfectly kept his commandments? Jesus Christ, right? And it's by his righteousness that we're seen, and because of the love that he's put upon us and we're born again, one of the ways we know that we're born again is that we pass from death into life, is that we love the brethren, right? And we love the Lord, right? How do we just show our love for the Lord? By keeping his commandments, right? It's all this pattern, right? There's a correlation between loving God and keeping his commandments, and it's not because you kept them perfectly. Jesus kept him perfectly. But because he kept him perfectly, you've got the Holy Spirit. You've been born again. You have a love for God. We love him because he first loved us. And we keep his commandments. So you can see there the throne of God at the great judgment day, the mercy that will be poured out to those that love him, right? We have that love, and who keep his commandments through Christ's work. And then as we're striving to give him glory and honor by, our obedience. And then everyone else who are his enemies, right? The carnal mind is what to God? Enmity, hatred, hostility, right? That will be your two responses as you're standing there before the throne of God. There will be a group of people who love him, and there will be a group of people who absolutely hate him. That's it. No middle ground. No other options. And if God hadn't changed us, we'd still be hating him. Right? Yeah, it's not because we're so great. All right, so repaying to them face to face. So that's the image there in Revelation at the end of, I guess it's chapter 20, where you've got the great white throne, and you've got everyone standing there, and they're read out of the books, and those that are judged according to their deeds. If it's their deeds that are on display, it will all fall short, and they will be, who are not found in the Lamb's Book of Life, will be cast into a lake of fire, along with Satan and death and hell and the false prophet and the beast and every other enemy of God. That's where it abides. All right, so here we're talking about the nation of Israel, and he's telling them why he's doing this. He's faithful. And so the charge for them, in very practical terms, is you need to love God and need to keep his commandments. Have we already heard that several times in this letter? Yeah, we sure do. Because verse 11 says, thou shalt keep the commandments. All right, you know how many times I looked up the word keep in Deuteronomy? 39. Keep. Guard, hedge, observe, pay attention to, right? Thou shalt therefore keep the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which I command thee this day. Right? Because those that love the Lord, things are very good. And again, this is a very conditional statement. Right? We're talking to those who, if you're loving him and you're obeying him at this time, things will be good. There are promises and there are curses associated with obedience and disobedience for the nation. So if you keep it, as I command you this day, but not only keep them, to do them. It's one thing to know about them, to observe them, to see them. It's another to then apply it every time. Wherefore, it shall come to pass, if, all right, listen to that, we've got a conditional, if ye hearken to the judgments, and keep, and do. All right, so you're listening, you're observing, you're guarding, and you're doing. You got all these things. If you're doing all those things, that the Lord thy God shall keep unto thee the covenant and the mercy which he sware unto thy fathers. Right? Is there any doubt that they're going to go into the land and they're going to conquer initially? No, that's a win. But this is all right, you're there, what are you doing? If you're heeding and you're keeping and you're observing and you're doing, then the mercy will continue for you there. Right? And remember back, I guess it was chapter 4, he'd already said, I know you won't. and I'm going to call heaven and earth to testify against you this day, because at that time he's going to cast you out of the land. So, he'll keep that covenant of mercy he swore on the fathers, and he will love thee and bless thee and multiply thee. All right, so these are direct correlations between their obedience and practical blessings from God. Again, we're talking in the covenant with the natural nation of Israel. Right? Don't extract this out and try to make this a prosperity gospel or anything like that. What we're talking about is, to this nation there was a particular promise. If you love him and obey him, he's going to love and bless you in pretty much every way imaginable. Bless the fruit of thy womb. So not only will you not have anybody who's sterile, male, or barren, female, you won't have any miscarriages. Nobody will be born with any form of deformities. Everything will be whole and the best possible, including all of your animals, right? If all of your cattle are only breeding and having no deformities or deaths or whatever, you will grow and multiply very, very quickly. All right? He will bless the fruit of thy womb, the fruit of thy land, right? Anything that you're planting, your corn, your row crops, your wine, all right? So your grapes, your oil, your olive trees, the increase of thy kine, your cows, the flocks of thy sheep, in the land which he sware unto thy God to give thee. So every aspect of your economy, large scale and individual scale, was conditioned upon obedience. That if you do right, you will have these things. Thou shalt be blessed above all people. There shall not be male or female barren among you or among your cattle. That's how I was able to say that confidently a minute ago about blessing the fruit. So both people and cattle. You won't have anybody who can't bear children. And the Lord will take away from thee all the sicknesses, and put none of the evil diseases of Egypt which thou knowest upon thee, but will lay them upon all them that hate them. Okay, they got to see quite a few diseases put upon Egypt in connection with the plagues. There was probably a bunch of other diseases that just existed because it's a civilization and diseases happen, right? He's saying those things that you'd seen over there in your lifetime, in your span, I will guard you from those and won't give them to you. I'll actually give them to your enemies. Why in Leviticus is there so much language written about leprosy? Because at some point they were going to disobey and there was going to be leprosy among them. If they'd obeyed, you wouldn't have had to have that language. Thou shalt consume all the people which the Lord thy God shall deliver unto thee. All right, so this is the standard of how are you going to conquer? You're going to consume them all. The Lord's going to deliver them unto thee. Thine eye shall have no pity upon them. Neither shalt thou serve their gods, for that will be a snare unto thee. It's like you are creating a noose and putting your head into it if you leave them alive or you worship their gods. You remember why Saul got kicked out from being king? He was sent to go defeat a people, and he was told to wipe them out. And he killed all the people, except he left all the cattle alive, because you don't want to waste good cattle, and he kept the king alive. So he, in two areas, had substituted his own judgment for what God. Now, God was bringing judgment upon that people because they had been the ones that had come out and attacked Israel when they'd come out of Egypt. And so God there had a sentence he was executing like nearly 500 years later, and his executioner was not being faithful. He wasn't following through on the sentence. And so, again, God's the sovereign God. He was allowed to say what they should do, and so that's what they're being instructed to. All right. Now, Moses is going to deal with something that's going on within their hearts. If thou shalt say in thine heart, these nations are more than I, how can I dispossess them? Right? When you doubt, when you fear, when you start looking at the numbers, the tallies, and so how are we going to do this? Here's what he says. This is what you need to do. Thou shalt not be afraid of them. Right? That's not a suggestion. That's a command. Thou shalt not be afraid of them, but shalt well remember. All right, the word well and remember are the same Hebrew word repeated twice. Recall to mind. Recall to mind. Recall to mind what? What the Lord thy God did unto Pharaoh, the leader of that mega, country back there, and unto all Egypt. Go look, the great temptations which thine eyes saw. Yeah, you were kids, but you remember. The signs and the wonders and the mighty hand. I mean, we're talking frogs and flies and darkness, firstborn sons killed, blood in the river. I mean, this is the God, right? You don't have to be afraid of these guys who look like they're bigger or taller than you are and got strong cities. The wonders and the mighty hand that stretched out, and the stretched out arm whereby the Lord thy God brought thee out. So remember that. Here's the point. So shall the Lord thy God do unto all the people of whom thou art afraid. All right? You're fearing in your heart. Don't be afraid. Thou shalt not be afraid, because he is going to do the same thing to these guys that you saw happen before. All right? So that's a promise. Moreover, and this one's cool. We don't get to see this come into fruition, but this is also a promise that they didn't take advantage of. Moreover, the Lord thy God will send the hornet among them, until they that are left and hide themselves from thee be destroyed. Now we know that when they go in, Israel is not going to faithfully execute this command to wipe out all 7 nations. Right? They're only going to do some of it. Had they gone and fought everybody they could find, there would be a certain amount of refugees. How long was David able to flee from Saul without him finding him? I mean, like years. I mean, he was on the road for years. It's hard to find a refugee. God's saying, those that are escaping from you, I will send hornets out after them, and I will kill them. You don't get to see that. It doesn't come to fruition because they don't do the first thing of destroying everyone that comes into their hands. But that was part of the promise. I thought that was pretty neat. Yeah. Sounds like an awful way to die, but yeah. All right. Thou shalt not be afraid of them. Why? For the Lord thy God is among you, a mighty God and terrible. This is one of those, let's think about who you really ought to fear. The one that is among you is mighty, strong, powerful. He's terrifying. That's the one you need to fear. Right? Don't fear the little yappy chihuahua over here. You've got the big dog behind you, right? I mean, it's put in perspective. He's among you. He's mighty, a mighty God and terrible. The Lord thy God will put out those nations before thee little by little. So this is a question of timing. Are you going to go in and conquer everything at once? No, and there's a reason for that. Thou mayest not consume them all at once, lest the beasts of the field increase upon thee. All right, so the nation of Israel wasn't big enough to occupy the whole territory yet. They were too small, right? You've got 7 nations that are all larger than you, and so you need to be at least 7 times bigger to have a chance occupying the space. And so it would be little by little so that these cities, these crops, these everything that you're going in to possess is ready for you, right? You've got a city that's there, houses that are built, they've got supplies, they've got furniture, they've got built olive trees and everything. But if you wipe out the people and you have those things go dormant for several years until you grow up big enough to occupy it, the animals will eat them and tear them up. And so that's not how God's laying it out. It'll be little by little. But remember, the Lord thy God shall deliver them unto thee, and shall destroy them with what kind of destruction? A mighty destruction, right? And shall deliver them with a mighty destruction until they be destroyed. Right? Who is the actor in all that? God's doing the delivering, God's doing the destroying, and how long? Until they be destroyed. And he shall deliver their kings into thy hand. There's a part in Joshua where 5 kings hide themselves in a cave. And so they go and whoop all the people, and then they come back and deal with the kings. And then he tells the people, all right, you'll put your foot on the necks of these kings, of showing that this is who God has delivered into your hand. He'll deliver their kings into your hand, and thou shalt destroy their name from under heaven. Right? That was the command, that these 7 nations shouldn't exist anymore. There shall no man be able to stand before thee until thou have destroyed them. So if they had faithfully followed through on this, they would have been able to. God would have been with them despite their fears and reservations. And then we have the last 2 verses that we already talked about of not taking the sacrifices, the images, and recycling them. Okay, one last thought, and that kind of goes to Facebook. 2 Chronicles 7 and 14. We'll just start in 12. This is at the dedication of the temple by Solomon. The Lord appeared to Solomon by night and said unto him, I have heard thy prayer and have chosen this place, the temple, to myself for a house of sacrifice. If I shut up heaven that there be no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, verse 14 is what you see on Facebook. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. This is not a verse written to America. This is written to Israel in these conditional covenant promises. When they obeyed, God promised that there would be very good things to happen to that nation. When they disobeyed, there would be consequences. I mean, there's going to be whole chapters about these blessings and curses and the parallels here. And so when they repent themselves, he will restore back to giving them blessings. But within the context, that's who he's talking about. He's talking about the natural nation of Israel and those conditional covenants. This is not just a general catch-all, push the button. Right? Context matters. Any questions on that?